I'd rather be dead than not this. That's what you really believe in. But we are so far down the road. Satan plays this game all the time, and he loves to play it. Distortion over deception. Make you think you're something you're not really, until you're so far down the road it's too late to turn around. Ask a drug addict. I was just at a party having a good time, and I tried it, and it felt so great. And then I decided when I was down, I should do it again. It made me feel so great. And the more I did it, the more it didn't feel the same. And then I was just spent the rest of my life chasing a high I couldn't get. And the next thing you know, I didn't have teeth. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a job. I was homeless. Oh, that's when you realized maybe heroin wasn't such a good idea. Maybe crystal meth wasn't a good idea. How far down the road of wokeness are we? And is it too late to turn around? I'm going to give you one little snapshot. It was my favorite story of the day. It took a 15-minute setup for you to have the same moment I did. But for those of you that painfully, like my wife makes me painfully watch 911 Lone Star. And then my observation of The Bachelor earlier in the week, and then the stats of the facts of this story. Something doesn't jive. And what doesn't jive is the narrative, the illusion versus reality and the truth. I hope you're following, and I hope you can stay for the punchline. It's next.
Matt Murphy, weekdays at noon.
I'll be here for 3 hours on the next Matt Murphy Show, and I've decided to invite friends, not only you, but also Cameron Smith of the TennesseeandNAL.com and Representative Scott DelGiorno. It's all on the next Murphy. It starts at high noon.
Super Talk 99.7.
Roof leaks never come at a good time. If you discover a roof leak in your home or business, don't just assume you need to replace your roof. I'm Tim Leeper with Tim Leeper Roofing, and our team can assess your roof and discuss options with you. Think about it. Why spend several $1,000s to replace your roof when you can get another few years out of it? I'm sure you can find something to do with all that money you didn't spend on a new roof. Call us at 615-553-2782 or online at timleeperroofing.com.
Guys, for those of you with a full head of hair, congratulations. Studies show that one of the most attractive physical features is a full head of hair. Want to know the least attractive and the most aging? Well, it's hair loss. No amount of car, house, or success can make up for that thinning or balding, as it leaves the greatest lasting physical impression. But it doesn't have to be that way. Advanced Hair is finally available near Nashville with a quick one-day solution to your hair loss. Advanced Hair could help you look 10 to 20 years younger. No more expensive pills or special shampoos, just your very own natural hair, guaranteed to grow for life. Advanced Hair has improved the tens of thousands of lives, including top radio personalities across the country. This breakthrough treatment is finally available near Nashville. Did I mention your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day? Call 629-348-HAIR for your free consultation and get $500 off. 629-348-HAIR or advancedhair.com.
President Biden talking tough in Poland. 4 men in custody in Middle Tennessee after a sex sting. And wait till you hear about the sex sting in San Diego and the video and what's on it that police released. That's coming up at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, we did a long 15-minute opening monologue. For the sake of podcast, I guess, Mac, you could combine them and it'll make a little bit more timely sense. But when I get up in the morning and I look at news, I used to say behind every headline is a story, and then behind every story, there's so much to talk about because really behind every story is an issue. Now, the issue, you spend a lifetime applying wisdom and worldview and study. You arrive equipped to handle the news story based on the issue behind it. And the issue behind this is the LGBTQ movement, wokeness, and really recruitment. I mentioned that I was watching The Bachelor, which I hadn't seen, and we documented it, right? It was something like I hadn't seen it in 20 years. And I'm noticing an entire new generation. This is the internet social media generation now doing reality TV in the form of The Bachelor, and they can't communicate. Their values are non-existent. Their worldview is non-existent, and their communicative skills are non-existent. They grew up typing, texting, emojing, and watching videos. And now they're trying to express things about life and marriage and commitment and love. So what you find is shallow twits who can't even speak. Like everything is like, and they can't even
what?
So, and what they kept saying over and over again, other than was I feel seen, I feel seen, I feel seen. I see you've been indoctrinated. I see you've been socialized. This notion that you have to be seen in order to not be hated, in order to not be a victim. That's at the heart of wokeness, at the advanced levels of understanding of it. So that's why when you watch a television commercial, guys watching a football game eating Doritos. Whose house? I don't care how multicultural. I don't care how open you are. Who naturally exactly has an Hispanic? First of all, how often do you see a multicultural marriage? It's a white guy with an Asian girl or a black woman with a white guy. It's never, you can't have two whites married anymore. It's just, it's visually unacceptable. And then the kids might be two whites and an Indian. And you're like, well, how'd the Indian become their kid? Well, it must have been adopted. And then there's a black guy in the corner waving, he needs more chips. I mean, it's going out of your way to make sure that no visual can be looked at and not have every type of gender, every type of nationality and color represented, because that's their God. That's what they've replaced God with, multiculturalism. Now, listen, I have 2 gay relatives, first cousins. I have had a very close gay friend in my 20s. I would say Andrew and I shared a friendship with a hairdresser who was gay, who we love very much. He's now dead. And I have one existing gay friend that I have been friends with for now going on 28 years. I don't validate, but I respect. And I'm able to have something in common with them beyond their sexuality. I can tell you with Damon, for example, I once had to tell him, Damon, I love you. I couldn't love you more. But does everything have to be about you're gay and your sex life? Isn't there anything else we can talk about? Isn't there anything else to you? That was the beginning of a real relationship where we started talking about life. He started telling me about his childhood faith. He started telling me about how he was molested. I mean, we really got somewhere once I did that. But when you're watching television, you can't watch a movie, you can't watch a series, you can't watch a show without there always being multicolored people, multinationality people, and there's always a gay couple. And you're thinking to yourself, is half the world now gay? If you add up all the LGBTQ, and may I tell you, I'd have to go deep in the weeds of this study, most are bisexual. See, for the longest time, we were looking at as low as 1.5 to never any higher than 2% gay. And think of all the indoctrination, K through 12, higher education, children's programming, sitcoms, dramas, movies, all the overrepresentation. And the number's still there. In fact, you've got to add in all the bisexuals, which make up most of them, only to get to 7.2%. Now, go back to The Bachelor, go back to the heart and soul of the gospel of wokeness. Everything's about being seen. Because if I can't see myself on TV, well, now I can't. I mean, we got a whole generation that's not seeing white on TV. Count commercials tonight. If blacks make up 16% of the population, what percentage of the commercial visuals you will see today will be black? In television shows, what's the percentage? I'm not a bigot. I also don't compromise my values and beliefs found in Scripture and Christ, but all the people I know, I've only mustered up 3. And you might say, well, that's because that's the people you surround yourself with. No, that's the percentages. If there's 100 people in my phone and 3 are gay, that's about right. That shouldn't be uncomfortable to talk about. I'm going to share with you later today more in depth a study. If you add up all the bisexuals and the transitory ones, because not everybody stays bisexual, 80% of the transgendered resolve their confusion by the end of puberty. There's people moving in and out of these numbers, and you can't get above 7%. But look how overrepresented they are everywhere you look. That's the power of they must be seen. And then who's the first, without getting canceled, to say, perhaps you're being disproportionately overseen? Oh, let me tell you something. The best stories are the ones no one talks about.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 2 minutes and a new warning for Moscow. President Biden saying in Warsaw this morning that Russia's decision to pull back from a nuclear arms control pact is a, quote, big mistake.
Article 5 is a sacred commitment the United States has made. We will defend literally every inch of NATO.
President later reassuring Eastern flank NATO allies the U.S. will remain by their sides as the Russian invasion of Ukraine reaches the 1-year mark. Right now in Tennessee, 4 men are in custody after a sex sting in Sumner County. The sheriff's department says authorities placed fake ads on websites known to be linked to sex for money in an ongoing effort to stamp out human trafficking. Meanwhile, in California, San Diego's police chief says they busted 48 people and released video from a month-long investigation. Scantily clad women and girls openly soliciting for prostitution in broad daylight.
Some teenagers in our community, some as young as 13 years old, are being sold as sex slaves. Their innocence stolen.
That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Record-breaking warmth today, but showers and storms return late this evening and overnight tonight. This is meteorologist Stefano DiPietro in the First Alert Weather Center. Temperatures climbing into the mid and the upper 70s for that high today with a gusty wind of 30 to 40 miles per hour at times. Tonight we'll see showers and storms work their way back into the mid-state. Small chance for some strong storms west of I-65, but not a widespread issue. Main concern will be damaging wind gusts. Tomorrow we are drying out, sunshine back, temperatures in the 80s.
Currently at 9:34, we have cloudy skies, windy conditions, 69 degrees at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood. It is 70 to the north in Hendersonville. Downtown on Music Row, the statues are naked, but they are shaking a little bit in the wind. 70 degrees feels like 70 in Nashville at WTN. Well, now the market's turning red again. Every time Joe Biden opens his mouth, the market turns red. Dow's now down 57, 33. Now we're about 1,000 off where we were a week ago. Down 57 at 33,071. Nasdaq's down 43 at 11,448. The S&P's down 500. S&P 500's down 12 at 3984. All three are in the red. Nothing dramatic, basically flat, but certainly not recovering or correcting from yesterday. Market is flat at 935. Hey, if you want to look and feel better about yourself, I got a great recipe for you. Pick up the phone and call my friends at PAI Medical in Brentwood. We grow hair. This can be the year you grow your hair back. Now, we have the finest physicians, the latest technologies and results. We have the only hardest robotic transplant procedure in the region. Also, we're the only company in Tennessee with PAI's multi-unit hair grafting procedure. It's a trademark procedure. It gives you more hair in one procedure. What does that do? Saves you time and money. And no one else has it. And only the company I trust has it. We have many, many non-surgical solutions as well. What's best for you? That's the best part. You sit down for a private consultation. It's absolutely free, no obligation, and quite frankly, it's fascinating. Now, it shouldn't shock you that we're an epicenter of entertainment. We have the finest hair restoration facility in Brentwood. Take advantage of it, because you don't need to have Stars Wealth to go where the stars go for thinning hair and hair loss. Natural results from a company you can trust. And it all begins with a private consultation that's free and no obligation. Make this the year you get your hair back. Call PAI Medical in Brentwood today. 376-6010, 376-6010. That's 376-6010. Online at wegrowhair.com. The fuck?
Hey, it's Dan Mandis. Window Nation has the coolest deal ever for keeping you warm. You get 2 windows free with every 2 that you buy, with 0 down payment, 0 monthly payments, and pay 0 interest for 24 months. Now is the perfect time to take advantage of Window Nation's deep discounts, all the while reinvesting in your biggest asset. Not to mention the savings on your energy bills for years to come. Call them today. Mention my name, 866-90-NATION, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
The story of the nurse and the foot pain that nearly brought him down.
I feel like I'm giving people their lives back.
Robert lived to take care of his patients, but he couldn't do it unless he took care of his foot pain.
I have plantar fasciitis. It'll almost put you on your knees. That's how much it hurts.
His own recovery started when he got fitted for arch supports at the Good Feet store.
Now that I'm pain-free, I can make these people feel better.
Can't beat that. Stop by or schedule your free fitting at goodfeet.com.
Visit one of the Good Feet store's 4 convenient locations in Nashville, Mount Juliet, Cool Springs, and Franklin.
Hey, it's Dan Mandis for Provision Care's Proton Therapy. Proton therapy is a targeted, precise cancer treatment, and it could be the best option for you or someone you love. To learn more about one of the world's most advanced cancer treatments, only available at one place in the region, go to NashvilleProton.com.
(9:42), 18 minutes before 10 o'clock. Windy, cloudy, 70 on our way to a spring-like high of 79 and rain later this afternoon and tonight. Always a pleasure to have consultant and analyst and all things Republican Chris Walker join us. And Chris, what I want to talk about today is very, very significant and very, very important. So we often talk about, how do we go from Donald Trump carrying Kansas with 57% of the vote to then losing 4 years later? And one of the things when we analyze it is, there are some natural proclivities. All right. So the Democrats focus on early voting, and they certainly did in 2020, and the president and the Republicans didn't. So there was an early voting advantage. That needs to be addressed. There was also issues of ground game. This is not that. So I sent you the story, and it's a great piece done by the American Conservative. And they take a look at Integrated Voter Engagement Initiative. And they take you through one of the civic committees, and how they handle it. And basically, if I can boil it down, this isn't ground game. This isn't early voting. This is finding ignorant, unengaged political people, non-voters, and getting ballots and getting them and bringing them to vote. It's why polls are off. It's why a lot of people think that there's some kind of fraud going on. I would call this cheating fair and square. But what did you make of the article? How common is it? And is it something to beat them, we must join them?
Yeah. Good morning, Michael. I think it reminds me of that Dennis Green clip when, they were his Arizona coaches. They are who we thought they were. I feel like that's exactly what's going on here. This is exactly what we thought it was, right? We see them, I guess in a way, just taking advantage of the rules in a better way than we are. That's not an indictment of anybody or any type of thing, but Republicans have to decide, are they going to play by the same rules or not? There's a lot of talk about, this is wrong or this isn't the way to do it. Well, I disagree. I mean, nobody's breaking the law and reaching out to voters and having them vote. They're just taking the system that we've seen and, applying it to its natural conclusion.
All right, but this is fishing a bigger pond, quite frankly, to use an analogy. So mostly what we
saw that.
What we've always done is voters, registered likely voters. And we make the game winning hearts and minds of likely registered voters. You're fishing a small pond. They're taking the 50% that never vote, finding them with a ballot in their hand, and taking them. That's pretty rich.
Yeah, paying activists to do that, going to knock on people's doors, saying, "Are you going to vote? Are you not going to vote?" Here, but isn't Donald Trump bad? Vote for Joe Biden. I mean, that is what they're doing. That is a product of kind of 100% universal mail-in balloting. A lot of policies that conservatives know to be wrong. Right? We see that what we know in terms of voting is the best way to do it is show up in person. Michael DelGiorno is Michael DelGiorno when you vote and show an ID. Well, after COVID, a lot of the election rules that Democrats have been trying to get for decades, immediately accelerated, and they took advantage of it. Now, the problem is you have COVID rules in a lot of these, frankly, bluer states that are being used as normal election rules when they were used as an emergency situation in 2020. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled a lot of the stuff that they were doing invalid, and the legislature went ahead and moved it around to make it valid again. What we're seeing here are two sets of rules in red states and blue states. Now, ironically, we saw a lot of pushback in the Georgia election reforms that we saw, 2 years ago. Brian Kemp did, and Joe Biden went out there and said it's new Jim Crow. Well, what did we see last year? We saw a Democrat win the Senate. We saw a Republican win the governorship, and we saw a higher turnout than ever before. This can be done in a real way. My solution, or what I would advocate for, is continuing to advocate for a path like we see in Georgia and Florida. The problem is you're not going to have that pass in a state like Pennsylvania and New York.
No.
So, the New York GOP is going to have to figure out how to play by the same rules. You have 50 different rules in 50 different states. It's a problem unless there's a federal law, and I'm not in favor of a federal election law at all. So, the states need to figure this out, in my view.
So let's look at this from their perspective. Brilliant, right? I mean, you couldn't begin to expose it, let alone prosecute it, because first and foremost, it's cheating, fair and square. It would be at such a numerous level, it would be impossible for America's ADD to follow. You've got all these candidates still playing by the old rules. They're spending a lot of money to consultants and research to identify registered likely voters. They're spending that money just going and getting all the people that normally don't vote to vote, and they're ignorant and unengaged. They'll just do whatever you tell them. Maybe you're even paying them. Meanwhile, we're spending all this money going places, touching people, trying to win hearts and minds, and buying expensive advertising. And they're going right to the ground and taking people normally that don't vote by the tens of thousands while you're trying to reach a couple hundred. I got to tell you, I would first and foremost call it cheating and fair and square. And then I would secondly call it brilliant. Good for them.
Well, let's look at it from a geographic standpoint as well, and let's take Wisconsin as an example.
Oh, that's a good one.
There are two blue cities in Wisconsin, Milwaukee and Madison. Green Bay is purple, but you don't have to do a lot of actual work. I mean, it's a lot of work, but you have a lot of condensed Democrat votes in Milwaukee. You don't have to travel a long way. You can go to one apartment building and get 500 people. Whereas for Republicans, they're spread out in rural areas, and it takes 10 minutes to drive from one farm to another to reach the same amount of voters. You're talking about a very logistically challenged position with which they have a real advantage, because you can go to urban areas and pick off likely Democrat voters in a way that Republicans have a hard time, because our conservative voters are more rural and suburban, which means it's harder to kind of focus on one particular area and do it. It's very easy to get 10 million votes in New York City because you can kind of go through the city on a block by block basis and have it knocked out. It's much harder to go to upstate and do the same thing. So it's not only an issue of what they're doing with ballot stuffing, it's an issue of how do you actually kind of find those voters. Are there Republican voters in the cities? Yeah. How do you find them? You got to invest and go in that way. But it's a very uphill battle compared to
I get that. I get that.
Where we know
it is very important for everybody listening. Right now, the paradigm, the narrative, the matrix of everybody listening is the Democrats cheat. whether they're doing it digitally through Old Dominion or whether they're doing it like 2,000 mules, gathering up, harvesting the ballots, and then delivering them. What they don't get is what's really happening. The first step, you need to know how they're doing it, and they're cheating fair and square, and they're doing it in a way you're not doing it, number one, at all. You're still playing by the old game, and that's why you don't see it coming. It's very stealth. That's why you start the day because of early voting. And then there's all these votes coming that you're unaware were coming because they're tapping into people that had no intention of voting. Even 2,000 mules, Chris, if you take a look at that now, it makes sense. These organizations are harvesting the ballots. They're going and grabbing people that otherwise wouldn't vote, putting the ballot in their hand, helping them fill it out, and then they're delivering it in masses. This is the game that's being played, and it's being played very well. Right. It's going to make blue bluer than ever. It's going to make swing states swing their way every time. Somebody's got to address this, and not through the hysteria of narrative. No offense, although I know 30% of my audience will only hear I'm taking a jab at Donald Trump. But Donald Trump promised a Kraken that never came because he's trying to prove fraud, and he's not understanding the ground game of cheating fair and square. It needs to be addressed, or we're going to continue to lose at a national level.
Is it unethical? Yes. Is it illegal?
No.
And that's the difference that you have to kind of delineate to solve the problem.
But astutely, to your point, you're not for federal laws because elections need to be handled locally and overseen by the state. But that plays right into their hands, too, because then you got blue states that get bluer, red states, they don't care, they stay red. And the purple states always go their way because they're playing that game. I mean,
what we've seen with that is a migration, right?
To your analogy,
people are fleeing New Jersey.
Yeah, but eventually they flee, but then not all that's left. But still, in Wisconsin, I play the game in Madison and Milwaukee. You don't have a response. In Pennsylvania, I play the game in Philadelphia. You don't have a response. They're winning, and they're going to keep winning. And it's not fraud. Right. It's unethical. This story is something for Donald Trump to read today. I doubt he would and get it. But every American, if they want to know what's really happening and stop chasing rabbit holes that go to nowhere and just go to hatred, this is really how they're doing it. And we know it.
That's right.
So to do nothing is really insanity. Chris Walker, All Things Republican, joining us. I sent you one, by the way, that's the American Conservative, and the title is Bluing Kansas. And you'll find it on my Facebook wall, or just Google Bluing Kansas, and I think it would pop right up for you. I sent you another story that I found very interesting. It's an easy punchline, and then we move on. But my dad had the expression, who dropped dead and made you boss? Should Ron DeSantis be taking advice from, of all people, Sarah Palin?
Yeah, I saw that story. I found it a little. When you sent it to me, I'd seen it before too. My only reaction is don't take the bait. I feel like this is the media trying to divide Republicans and create, stir up headlines in a way that makes us distracted from the goal of beating Joe Biden, right? Like, I don't know if anybody's thought about Sarah Palin in years.
No.
Not no disrespect to Palin.
She just lost the congressional race. But no. All right, but here's the gist of it. First of all, you great discernment. No elephant. You get the discernment roar, which is a heavenly. All right, so where does it come from? Fox. What does Fox know? Fox knows everybody thinks Sarah Palin's a jamoke. Nobody's even lusting after her anymore. They just think she's a jamoke. So they don't like Donald Trump. This is to cast Donald Trump in a bad light and to energize DeSantis. I didn't take that bait, nor do I take the bait of who dropped dead made Sarah Palin boss. But to the issue of step aside, let Donald have a free run, and then I've crunched the numbers, and I don't think he can win. And then you run again in 4 years. There's some way for there to. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is being ugly while DeSantis is leading and doing great things, and he's tweeting nasty things.
I just reject the notion that someone should wait their turn. I mean, it's such a.
That's for the voters to decide. Well, if they're
exactly
real voters
right.
voting, yeah.
If Barack Obama taught us anything, he would have waited, and it would have been Hillary Clinton's turn. But he ran, and he won. He won 2 terms. Like, we could talk about the policies till we're blue in the face, but he took the risk and ran. There is no age limit except being 35. And Ron DeSantis passes all of those tests. He's been a tremendously good governor in Florida. I know your audience knows I'm a Ron DeSantis homer. Gladly to say so. But ultimately, I just see that as somebody who ultimately he has every right to run, and this is his moment potentially. And it's not some kind of backbencher Republican to tell him not to. But again, I think that's a distraction. Ultimately, what you said is right. What policy wins is he providing in Florida? What blueprints is he showing for conservatives and Republicans to actually win and beat back in the culture wars? What kind of progress is he making on the budget and turning Florida into a place that everyone wants to move to? Those are the types of things that we want in a federal government as well, and that's why Ron's going to have a good case to make if and when he decides to run.
Things we didn't get to because we ran out of time. That's why I wanted to start early. All this nonsense of the president in Europe. Vivek Ramaswamy, here's another tech giant guy running for president, only saying a lot of really smart things. Sacred cows the Republicans haven't been courageous enough to attack, going beyond just border issues, energy issues. I wanted to get to that. And then the data that all points to Joe Biden really is their best bet. I don't agree with some of the stories this week that say that, but he really is their best bet. And then the ultimate question, is he beatable? Maybe we'll get to all that next week, or maybe if you can pop back on Friday, we'll do that. I would love for you to.
I can go along today too if you want. But,
well, I wished I could.
Friday's
But yeah, now I've got. Yeah, but let's plan on Friday, and I want you to. I don't know if I sent it to you, but I'll send you the Vivek Ramaswamy audio. I mean, this guy is really wanting to undo some sacred cows that are the very deepest roots of wokeness and political correctness that we have turned into law, and they can be reversed. They were just executive orders that have just been, becoming a way of life, and they can be uprooted as quickly as they were rooted by LBJ in terms of an executive order. And I thought it was really refreshing. It's interesting. It's something I hadn't even thought of in terms of affirmative action. So maybe we will come back and do more of an extended conversation, because that's when you go beyond the news story into the actual roots of the issue. So let's do that Friday.
Vivek, that sounds great. Vivek is a true ideas primary candidate, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the discussion.
I do too, and I think somebody like DeSantis will be absorbing some of it, and I think it will meet his worldview, and he would be the right person to make it a reality. Appreciate your time very much. We're late for news. When we come back, don't expect to afford a home unless you make at least $100,000 a year. That's the reality of the Biden economic vision. Next.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Wind advisory in effect today. Gusts up to 45 miles per hour. Showers and thunderstorms later on. Full forecast and traffic in 5 minutes. Right now across the northern half of the country, snow. Lots of it. Check your flight before you head out. Fox News reporting more than 1,000 flights canceled today. Trevor Roltz in Minneapolis.
They're going to be opening their armories 24/7 as shelters. They've also deployed some small unit support vehicles that will be able to be tracked all over the state so they can rescue stranded drivers, because officials are saying that they are expecting travel to be impossible.
In Utah, 10 inches of snow. State authorities, or rather employees, told to stay home today. Authorities issuing an avalanche warning. And that avalanche warning coming after 3 hikers were killed in Washington state after being swept 500 feet down a mountain on Sunday. President Biden will be departing Europe today, but is reassuring NATO allies of his commitment to continue to support Ukraine against Russia.
This is an important moment. I look forward to the discussion and the next steps we can take together and to keep our alliance strong.
Meanwhile, China's top foreign policy officials been meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin this morning, Putin wanting weapons. Right now in Tennessee, the Sumner County Sheriff says 4 men are in custody after a sex sting in conjunction with the TBI, Human Trafficking Unit. Authorities say these men answered fake ads on websites where people are known to go to find sex to pay for. One of the men, Daniel Barrios of Laverne, allegedly wanted to have sex with minors. And in California, 48 people rounded up for alleged human trafficking in San Diego, where District Attorney Summer Stephan described videos of the month-long investigation of women and girls as young as 13 soliciting in the street.
Human beings like they are products with hardly any clothing on, lines of cars like this is some kind of buying a hamburger at a 24/7 place.
Officials say they rescued 8 women being trafficked and 8 girls, including a runaway from Arizona. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Here's an interesting study, Ken. Is it time for ladies' night out? Spending time with friends can boost immune systems. It's a University of Oxford study. It mainly points to women. The health benefits include stronger immune system, faster recovery times, increased generosity. Activities buffer the body's biochemical and systems against coughs and colds. Unfortunately, only 2 out of 5 women have time to socialize this much due to juggling careers and children.
Yep.
And so I Googled Oxford, and I found the person who did the study, and I emailed him, and I said, why is this study only applying to women? He said, because when guys go to hang out, especially with a guy named Brother Ken, he just says, no, Brother Michael, I don't have time to hang out with you. So they couldn't find a statistical sample to see if it applied to men. Isn't it interesting? All the lockdown, of COVID, obviously, if we're ever honest with ourselves, a big disaster.
Yep.
The more that we turn to projecting a life, a social media life versus living it, we're finding out it's actually unhealthy. We were made to interact with one another. We were made to have intimate relationships and personal relationships. And I think it's just interesting to start watching these studies come out. But yeah, that was the number one thing about, shelter in place, was it was bad for the immune system.
Yeah.
And so it's only natural that study would follow, that ladies' night out is actually good for your health.
Now, oh, yes, it's ladies' night.
Having said
and
that,
the feeling's right.
I know there's one of my backsliding listeners who's having an affair on her husband. We'll use that excuse tonight as to why she needs to go out.
Jeez.
And shame on you, as my grandfather would say. Shame on you. Shame on you. And every time I have a guy's night out, it's just me and Nick. 10:06 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. How much money do you have to make to afford a home? The American dream for new home buyers doesn't start till you make at least 6 figures.
Goodness.
That's the Biden economy for you in real numbers. We'll talk to a real economist about it next.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11, or jumping into energy stocks, or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors, because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
All right, currently at 10:11, we have cloudy conditions. It's windy, too. 70 in Franklin this hour, 70 in Mount Juliet, 71 down in the borough, downtown on Music Road, cloudy, windy, 70 degrees. It feels like 70 in Nashville at WTN. The market, Dow's up 31 at 33,161. The Nasdaq's up 15 at 11,507, and the S&P's up a buck at 39.99. Obviously not a correction from yesterday's massive losses. The market is all in the green, but basically flat at 10:11. Hey, I want to talk about Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee. Jeff Eddy and his team are the best and the most affordable, and the best is not my opinion. They do residential. They do light commercial. They service all brands, all technologies, conventional and geothermal. They're recognized by Rheem as providing customers with the highest level of year-round comfort and service. What a great way to describe what I've enjoyed for 14 years. They're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi. If electric heat and air is your necessity or choice, best products, maintenance, and pricing. And for everyone, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Licensed, insured, and bonded for your protection. They're the best. Affordable? Well, one example coming up is spring. And spring is when you should maintenance your air conditioning units. Now, I have 3. You may have less, and you'll probably pay less. But you can't, no matter how many units you have, exceed $125 a home. You're going to get that back in energy efficiency, but you avoid hundreds in repair and thousands in early replacement. You take care of these units, we catch things before they break, or they don't break at all. Whether it's maintenance, repair, or replacement, trust who I trust. Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee. Call 784-4424, 784-4424, or online at efficienthvac.net. It's the most wonderful time of the week. I'm a terrible singer, but I don't care. Peter is here. It's the most wonderful time of the week. Peter St. Unge is a senior economist at one of the largest think tanks in the world, the Heritage Foundation. You can read his great work at heritage.org, and he joins us every Wednesday for these visits that he prepares hard for. He gets no compensation for this, but it doesn't stop him from preparing. And, you know, it's funny. We never have just these open conversations, but this is what I loved about the Dave Ramsey concept, all right? So, you know, Dave becomes very successful and very wealthy just teaching people common sense.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, I was sitting in an Italian restaurant, and I made too much money at a very young age. So I am like athletes, a stereotypical example. I got paid to go do a remote at a car dealership. I left with a $75,000 BMW 740. I just, because there was no amount of money I couldn't afford, you know. And then it gets out of control, and then I start leveraging. Now the credit cards are all maxed out. Now some loans are just interest only, and I'm barely getting by. Then you get a couple of surprises. But I'm playing this game like a mouse on a wheel. And honest to God, I'm 33 years old. I'm sitting in an Italian restaurant, and this was my epiphany that you're going to laugh out loud. I looked at my friend, and I go, wait a minute. I don't have to make more money. I can just spend less. And it was a real epiphany for me, Peter, because that's just how simple it is. At the end of the day, the solution for your home is make more or spend less. It never gets more complicated than that. So if your income starts to dwindle or it doesn't keep up with inflation, here's your choice. Spend less or get a second or third job. Get a side hustle. That's it. There is no brilliance beyond that. And so what we've been seeing is massive out-of-control spending by the government that creates inflation. Then the Fed kicks in everything it's trying to do to fight inflation without taking us into a recession, which it's about to do anyway. So it makes spending harder and harder and interest rates higher and higher and life more expensive. Well, now you either don't do, we saw the recommendation from the government last week, you know, just do without some things. But now for new people trying to buy their first home, here's the Biden economic vision in a nutshell. You better make at least $100,000 a year, or I don't even care what it is. You can't even get into the home buying experience. I mean, that's cutting to the chase real fast, isn't it? Home ownership is now unaffordable for 75% of Americans.
Yeah, and you know, even the top Americans, right? So 100,000, even if you are in the top 25% of earners, you're not going to hit that until you're in your 40s. So what, your kids are 10 or 12 by the time you can even afford a house? That's insane. So, you know, we used to live in a country where you'd get married in your 20s, you'd go ahead and buy a house, you'd make your payments, you'd raise your kids. You know, you would build relationships in your neighborhood. That was somewhere where you were planning to live your whole life. Your kids were going to grow up. They were going to know the kids down the street. That's the kind of society we used to have. Now we're looking at, what, you're going to live in a condo until you're in your 40s. Your kids are going to be going into high school before they actually have any space to run around. And, you know, where this is coming from is our government wins elections by promising magic beans. And there are no magic beans. It doesn't work that way. Generally, the way they do it is by making money real easy. They get like a tissue fire that makes the economy just take off, and you know, nobody can find workers, and God, look at all this money I'm making. And you know, people grow into those incomes very quickly. They get a brand new truck, they get a couple of trucks, they get a third truck so they can have a red one on Wednesdays. They just keep going. The thing is, that's not sustainable. So when that crashes, and the way it crashes is that the inflation comes in. It's like this tail at the end of it. And at that point, the Fed panics. They've been stomping on the gas. Now they're going to stomp on the brakes. And what ends up happening is, people, it takes people for a loop. Right now, they might have houses they can't afford. They might have all those trucks. They might have lifestyles that, you know, they've grown into, and it's hard to dial that back. And so the way that people, you know, make up the difference is credit cards. That's exactly the stage that we're at right now.
Well, worse than
People
that.
are
Worse than that.
piling on.
I was going to say worse than that, Peter, because you identified 2 weeks ago we noticed that the credit card usage was down dramatically. What did that tell us instantly? Everybody's reached their limit. People are maxed out.
That's what's happening.
Next
That's
is
exactly it.
So probably in real time right now, we're heading into falling behind. Then we're going to fall into bankruptcy.
Yeah, and we're seeing car repossessions. We're probably going to start seeing house, like we had in 2008 with people defaulting on their houses. We are going to see spreading distress among consumers, and that starts to drag the whole thing down. It's a tragedy for the people involved, and for everybody else, it makes the recession even deeper.
But isn't this the socialist dream? Out of one's means to another's need. So in other words, you're paying 10 times, we did Social Security one week, which was a joke, right? What my dad paid in throughout his career versus what I'm paying in, what he's going to get versus what I'm going to get. It's a Ponzi scheme. Well, it's all a Ponzi scheme. So you keep electing these people to give somebody something for nothing, and you're paying for it. The debt is a tax on you and what you can afford. Now, you're making sacrifices to keep what you have. They're doing nothing to get more than they ever had, but it simply doesn't work. And so when we come back, let's keep this simple. Now, your piece is brilliant. I want everyone to read it. But I want to keep it simple in that just as it's as simple for me, make more money or spend less, it's simple for them too. And that would be this question. Have wages kept up with inflation? Am I making so much more than my dad that I'm able to have what he had to keep up with how much more his dream house was $90,000, my dream house is $1 million? Am I making $1 million a year to match? No, because I'm actually making less or maybe a little bit more than my dad was in 1980. But I can tell you things are tenfold, depending on what it is, to 100-fold more expensive. So when we come back, are increased wages keeping up with increased cost and inflation? More with Peter St. Unge from the Heritage Foundation when we return on WTN next. I want to talk to you about King Insurance and Associates. They're an independent agent. That's advantage number one for you. That means they're going to go shop multiple companies on your behalf. That, along with bundling, is how they get you better coverage at a dramatically lower premium. And we'll talk about what dramatic is. Also, in our 28 years, we've weeded out the non-competitive companies and most difficult, kept great relationships with the biggest, best, and highest rated. So we have a better pool to choose from. Maybe that's how they beat my previous independent agent I was loyal to for a decade. And how bad did they beat him? By $1,500 annually. That's a lot. That's a lot of money to fight inflation with. And my coverage on my home, its contents, and automobiles is better. They reshop it every year. I added teenagers. They reshopped it. They're always working on my behalf to ensure I have the best coverage at the lowest possible premium. In short, you got everything to save and nothing to lose. Now, I saved $1,500. My listeners saved the same or more, but switch because you should as a company, a family, or an individual. Get a royal review today and make the switch to King because you should. 329-8121. Call 329-8121. That's 329-8121 or online at tkinginsurance.com.
President Biden trying to reassure NATO allies before he departs Europe today. Authorities in Tennessee looking for a man who ran away after leading police on a chase from Stewart County into Montgomery County. And a bill is up for discussion that bans TikTok from Tennessee colleges and universities. These stories and more coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
We started the show with an opening monologue, which was really the premise of my book, that there are 3 simultaneous wars. Now, this was 2002. It's now 2023. We're a long way down the road in these wars, and unfortunately, we're losing all of them. But the concept was that there was a invisible war that no one's really discussing, addressing, between capitalism and socialism. And we find ourselves a socialistic hybrid as we speak. The other, of course, was the culture war, abandonment of God and truth for a theory, moral relativism, and anything goes, a godless culture that has led to the chaos and insanity of women boxing against men in the name of boxing against women, so in which bathrooms to go to. Today, let's focus in economically. So we're talking about how the American dream now is a nightmare and fictitious for about 75% of young people. You simply can't even qualify for any type of home unless you make at least $100,000 a year. And home values are up, interest rates are up. That's blocking out about 75% of people. Most people don't make $100,000 till they're in their 40s. So for young people, the home ownership American dream is gone. And what's leading to this new socialistic reality and economic nightmare? I want to add to that, we talked about out-of-control government spending, government trying to be all things for all people. Government doesn't have any money, so they take it from you. Inflation itself is your biggest tax. Is wages increasing at the same rate as cost and inflation to keep up with this? And the answer, of course, Peter, is no, right?
It's redistribution, right? That's the name of the game. The thing is, in this case, it's a sick form of redistribution. It's not taking from the rich and giving to the poor. This is taking from the poor and the middle class and giving it to the rich.
Or
right,
yeah,
so
or to the absolute unengaged lazy.
They spend a couple of trillion to buy the votes. That's right, for certain classes, and the people who really get whacked on this are the middle class and the working class. So, banks pay 0.1% interest on your money now. It used to be that you could live off, like you could retire on a bank account. Okay, you can't do that anymore. So they've taken that. And then in order to fund that, okay, in order to drain your bank savings and hand it out to subsidized borrowers, Trump used to say, he said, the system is rigged. And I know it's rigged because I've played it.
Right.
Okay? And what it's rigged is that it subsidizes giant corporations. It subsidizes rich people so they can buy $10 million houses out in California. Right? All of that is subsidized because they push the rate so low that now you can't make any money on your bank account. So they steal from you in the good times, they call it. And then when they slam on those brakes, well, that's when, people lose jobs.
They just cut the
your
jobs.
wages go down.
Right.
Yeah. And rich people are not losing their jobs.
Let me give you an
example. The guy out in California is not dusting off his resume.
I'm going to give you an example from radio. And this isn't a bash on my company because all companies did it. This is corporate-owned radio. But we went through a tough time with Barack Obama. The greatest recession is the Great Depression. And so we lost literally over half our staff. That was 2008. Now, do you think when things recovered, anybody replaced any of those positions? No. So, what's lost is lost forever. What's gained is spent and absorbed and enjoyed forever. And so then what you do is you wake up a decade later with even lower wages, not keeping up with even higher inflation. 20 years ago, I wrote about a couple things to keep your eye on. When there are more tax receivers than taxpayers, run. There are now more tax receivers than taxpayers. That's what's fueling all this spending. When the debt reaches 100% of the GDP, not collapse, but you might want to consider running. That's happening. Now you've got the spending, you got the inflation, you have the wages not keeping up. Now the American dream is a pipe dream and soon to be a reality nightmare. More with Peter St. Ewens from the Heritage Foundation when we come back next on WTN.
10:30 on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. In the middle of a wind advisory, gusts up to 45 miles per hour today. Going to be warm, too. It's already 71 right here on Music Row. Full forecast in 2 minutes. President Biden will be departing Europe today, but reassuring NATO allies of his commitment to supporting Ukraine against Russia.
As NATO's eastern flank, you're in the front lines of our collective defense, and you know better than anyone what's at stake in this conflict.
Meanwhile, Russia President Vladimir Putin's been meeting with China's top diplomat in Moscow, Putin needing weapons. Right now in Tennessee, authorities are searching for a man who ran away after leading police on a chase from Stewart County into Montgomery County. Channel 4 says the driver eventually stopped on South Liberty Church Road, got out of the vehicle, ran away. Several law enforcement agencies on the scene looking. A bill is up for discussion at the State House that bans TikTok from colleges and universities in Tennessee. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
All right, currently at 10:34, we have cloudy skies, windy conditions. It is 70 at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood, 71 to the north in Hendersonville. Downtown on Music Row, cloudy skies, windy conditions, 72 degrees. It feels like 72 in Nashville. The market, Dow's up 42, NASDAQ's up 17, the S&P's up 2. It's all green, but basically the market is flat at 10:35, and that's after 1,000-point losses yesterday. Well, it's a new year, but it's probably the same pain, right? From last year, the year before, and the year before. And everybody's different, but back pain, neck pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain. These are all the things that we're living in and keeping us from doing the things we used to do and love. And at the Dr. Gill Center in Franklin, we've been helping people get back to pain-free living, back to doing what they love for over 30 years. We've done over 500,000 treatments. We've treated over 30,000 patients. And we can, with no needles and no downtime, help you achieve pain-free living and avoid surgery. Now, I always say it's your best bet to avoid surgery. It's even a wise first step, even if it leads to surgery. Because everyone's pain-free living experience begins with an accurate diagnosis. Somebody's got to know what to treat. And $23 covers everything at the Dr. Gill Center. Your extensive exam, any and all x-rays and imaging. You can take that diagnosis to your surgeon, to your MD, or stay put for chiropractic care. It really works. But don't do nothing and don't settle for a pill. Call the Dr. Gill Center. This is the year where pain-free living begins. 882-4838. Brand new phone number, 882-4838. 882-4838. Online at callmepainfree.com. Information-fueled, opinion-driven, that is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am Michael DelGiorno, and I am so grateful you're joining us for this segment. We've kind of just walked you through, I guess it was about, Peter, when was it? Almost 4 or 5 months ago. I just had you on randomly, and I thought, wow, an economist who gets it, who can speak a language every day people can understand. We're going to go through a long, tough economic time because I actually believe we're heading into a very deep recession. And depending on the choices that are made politically in the next 2 to 6 years, perhaps even beyond recession, we're already seeing out-of-control government spending. That speaks to, first and foremost, what is the proper role of the federal government? What is the proper size and role, a discussion we never have as it's grown out of control and as political pandering has led to out-of-control spending, which creates inflation. And when wages don't keep up and jobs don't keep up, creates what we've talked about today, the inability to own a home, the inability to be sustainable. Now you're getting into the role of the self-governed that can't be achieved. So we kind of covered more tax receivers than taxpayers, leads to pandering politicians, leads to out-of-control spending, debt exceeds GDP, inflation rises, Fed then has to address inflation with higher interest rates to cut off spending. Now life becomes even more unaffordable. American dream is dead. That's convenient for socialists who've been waging a war against capitalism. I get this text from a listener who says, thank you, Michael. As a younger listener, older people never take it seriously when I tell them that essentially nobody my age can afford their own property. Spot on as always. Let's give him some hope. Let's give him some principles. Now, obviously, some of it is collectively out of our hands, right? America needs to awaken to our intent. They need to return to self-governance, self-sufficiency. They need to return to a land of opportunity, not entitlement. Politicians need to be cut off from their out-of-control size, spending, and power grab. But, I mean, what could we tangibly tell someone younger so no matter how tough this stream and current is, they can be a successful salmon and get upstream and spawn?
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, if you are young and you're trying to afford a property, the trick is that the Fed is going to eventually play the exact same skit. They're going to push rates too low. That's going to make housing real cheap, probably happen in the next 3 to 5 years. So you've just got to wait. And when rates come down to 3-4%, then you buy then. But the bigger picture here is, can we recover from this? You know, a lot of things in this country are getting worse and worse. A lot of the trends look bad. And I think it's important to remember that our country has been through much worse in the past. The government that Lincoln built took a lot of work to, had a lot of power. They were throwing people in jail for disagreeing with the government. We had hyperinflation. We recovered from that. In fact, the golden age of certainly the American economy, but really the American society, started about 10 years after the Civil War. You had about a 30, 40-year period they called the Gilded Age. Everything was invented back then. We've been living off the fumes back then. The progressives ended it. All right, but the moral of the story is that the American people are what matters here. We have an amazing resilience. Americans are tough as nails. We have gathered the best and the brightest from across the world. We left them with the dregs back in, Europe and whatever other countries. We are incredible. And, when we look through history, we have achieved amazing things. And the government right now is pushing. It's making things worse, but we've been through worse, and we have come back.
What you would tell Alex is the same thing I would tell Alex, and I would instill in my children. First of all, big choices. When you're really young, and it might be too late for all of these each step of the way, but when you're really young, just focus on getting good grades. Just on the lark that you may decide to go to college, you can maximize because
That's right.
you know how college is a negotiating game. Tuition is a fake number. And there's all kinds of ways to achieve scholarships and negotiate. Then pick a college that's reasonable for what you're doing. In other words, if you want to be a teacher, you don't need to graduate from Harvard to be a teacher. So don't go somewhere outrageously so that you come out with more in student loan than you could possibly make in a decade in the field that you're in. So reasonable choices. Then once you have the grades to pick the college to be what you want to be, when you get out, you're going to start at the bottom. Whatever you do, make sure it's something you love and make sure you do it with passion and excellence. I have seen receptionists who were the best receptionists in the world become sales reps and then become the best sales rep. I mean, everything is an open door. That's why we want to have opportunities. This is where these minimum wage visions are killing open doors into careers. But you will start out maybe a sales rep. Do that better than any sales rep who ever lived, and you'll become a sales manager, and then you become a regional vice president. So focus in the moment, don't look ahead. And then I think you would probably encourage them the basic strategies. That's what I love about a 401k. That money's saved before I ever see it and can be tempted to spend it. But they ought to be saving, 20% long-term, put aside 5% for short-term, and then live within your means. What's left after that, now for believers out there, I would say you have your tithes and offerings that come in too. But for non-believers, you may not have that. But that's that. And if you do that at 20 and then invest in property over things that depreciate, you'll be in great shape. I don't care what the economy is. You'll rise above everybody else. I mean, that's the truth of it. But these are the common mistakes everybody makes, and that's how you end up at 36 in checkmate.
You're absolutely right. That's all great advice. There's something called the success sequence. And the idea is that no matter where you start, you do three things. Number one, you finish school. Number two, you get married before you have kids. Number three, you take any job. It doesn't matter. Start any job. It doesn't matter how low it feels. Okay, maybe you're going to feel like it's not good enough for you. There are so many successful people. I've worked menial jobs. I'm sure you have.
Sure.
Everybody successful worked a crap job at some point. It's part of the tuition. So take any job, work your way up, get good at it, make connections, reach out to people. That's all there is to it. You just keep pushing on that.
There is a simple stat. Poverty is the easiest thing to achieve, not because of what you're thinking when I say that. If you have a child out of wedlock, if you don't graduate, it's a recipe for poverty and generational poverty. And so we know broken family, single parenthood, child out of wedlock, no graduation leads almost perfectly to poverty. So and we're just giving you the reverse of that. I think if I could go back and relive anything, I would have spent a lot less on cars, a lot less on restaurants, and I'd have stretched myself a lot more on property in places where it appreciates and my 401k, and I'd be a millionaire today. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
But that's not what we do. So, we don't fail because we don't know what to do. We fail because we don't do what we know. Now, collectively, we are failing our capitalist land of opportunity intent. And I think the biggest picture would be what? We've lost sight of what the role of government is. I think that'd be sin number one, don't you?
Oh, yeah. And, part of the trick that socialism plays is that, it sort of paints this beautiful community where everybody is sharing and, we all act like one big happy family. That's not how it actually works, right? When you look at China or North Korea or the Soviet Union, that is not at all what was happening there. It is exactly the same as capitalism, but now you've got a bureaucrat dictating it. You've got politicians. You've got, in many cases, people who hate you, who are deciding how much food you're going to have now. That is a very different world. So it's a trick. It's like a marketing campaign. And what ends up happening is that the government gets bigger and bigger. It gets more and more involved. The government is bad at everything. There are certain things that we have to let it do, like the military, but the government is incompetent. It's across the board. Go to a DMV, see with your own eyes.
And you can go back to our founding. You can go back to our founding fathers, Peter. This is why they weren't interested. It's always going to end up in dictatorship or elite control, or communist socialism, as we learned later, or caste system, as we learned very early on in ancient Hindu cultures. But it never leads to freedom. It never leads to liberty, and it never leads to self-control and opportunity. I think that notion of losing sight of what we were intended to be, what is the proper role and size of government, what is the role and accountability and responsibility of the individual. I think step two is they sold you we're a democracy, a mob rule, and not a republic, because once you have mob rule, then you can sell the victim mentality that everybody is a victim of something and deserving of something, and now you open Pandora's box to pandering, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. And, we have been here. Our roots as a culture, throughout history have been extremely tolerant. We've had a lot of respect for hard work, for the individual, and even the government. When it's like a guard dog, you keep it on a short chain, it can be useful. However, what's happened really since World War I is the government got the upper hand. Now we serve it. And that needs to be reversed. We need to get back to, if we look at America in, 1910, 1905, the government took about maybe, in modern terms, $1 trillion. Okay, it took roundabout a fifth or a tenth of what it takes today. Imagine a government that small, what's it going to do? Well, instead of, these foreign adventures, or instead of, setting up brand new welfare programs or equity or global warming or, whatever the activists want from it, it's only going to have the money for the real things. So those people are going to focus on the knitting, and focus on highways and good governance and, legal systems that work properly, that actually punish the guilty. This good governance, I think, begins with you've got to take a lot of that money away. It's almost like a distraction, right? So all of these sort of side things, because they have the money for it, they do it. And then that distracts them from taking care of their knitting. And then we have, train derailments. We have all these things. And you say, well, wait, we're giving the government $6 trillion. Why the heck can't they fix railroad bridges? Well, because they're doing a lot of other stuff. They're busy.
Yeah, they could if they had even their fraud money back. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't want to say his name wrong. Ramaswamy. And he's running for president. And I want you to hear what Vivek said to Tucker Carlson. These are some of the deep-rooted sacred cows that must be addressed. And I think this goes even beyond anything Donald Trump has ever said. Listen.
I think we need to put merit back into America in every sphere of our lives. I mean, merit in who gets into this country. Let's start with that, okay? I think more people like my parents can be a good thing for this country. But people whose first act of entering this country as a law-breaking one, we should say a hard no to that. Not just who gets in, but also who gets.
I'll tell you what I like about that before I play the rest of it for you. We often, and we have for over 20 years now, Peter, talked about illegal immigration. We haven't talked about a failed legal immigration system that we have. We don't even see the two different, we're just in sins of commission. We're not even addressing the sins of omission. Vivek gets it. Keep listening.
Ahead, decimating affirmative action. It has been a national cancer. One of my top priorities will be to end affirmative action in every sphere of American life. And it's not just meritocracy and who gets ahead.
Ending affirmative action.
Yes.
I mean, our whole government is based on that idea.
Well, the funny thing, Tucker, is this would be an easy thing for president to do. Lyndon Johnson issued an executive order that requires anyone who does business with the U.S. government, that covers over 20% of the U.S. workforce, to adopt race-based quota systems. Any Republican president since Lyndon Johnson could have taken a pen and crossed that out. We haven't done it yet. I think that's the kind of courage we're going to need to muster, to go after these sacred cows, from woke religion in the form of affirmative action to this new climate religion. Which
there was a time nobody thought anybody after 9/11 would elect a Barack Hussein Obama. Trust me, America could shock you and elect a Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's going to set a powerful tone in the elective conversation. He may end up on a ticket. He may end up in a high cabinet position, or quite frankly, he may win. But the reason I played that clip for you, we got one more break. During the break, I want you to think about this. When did we take a wrong turn? I think there are several wrong turns. When we started going to income tax, not just for the purposes of a world war, but permanent and rising. I think the war on poverty became a war on capitalism. I think he brings up a Lyndon Johnson moment. I want you just with all your degrees and all your brilliance to think about the most pivotal root, bad, wrong moves we made that have got us in a near checkmate economic situation. We'll wrap up with Peter St. Onge when we come back on WTN next.
Crews are on the scene of a fire at a Tennessee facility that stores uranium for the United States nuclear purposes. Patrick Revel is in Kyiv. He's going to tell us about a big military rally in Moscow today, just as Russia President Vladimir Putin met with China's top foreign policy official. Putin in need of weapons and ammunition. We'll tell you about it at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, I've said for years, the only thing left shocking in life is the truth. Here's the truth. The federal interest payments are approaching $1 trillion. Just our interest is now more than our entire budget used to be, as our budget is 3 times that in 2008 and 5 times that today. That's a shocking reality in and of itself. And so if you don't have a land of opportunity and you don't have a work ethic, and now you have a land of entitlement and a land of victimhood, how do you get people, as the Founding Fathers said they never would, to vote against freebies? How do we get out of this mess? And how did we get into it? Let's retrace our steps. What would you, as a senior economist at the Heritage Foundation, Peter St. Onge, identify as probably the top 3 or 5 wrong turns we've made? And we're going to have to go back, kind of like Vivek was saying, and address them and deroot them.
Yeah, part of it was soon after the Constitution was passed. There were a number of court cases. Originally the states were on top, and the federal government was, kind of a useful convenience. And there were a couple of court cases that were decided. Let's see, McCullough versus Maryland is one of the big ones. And the Chief Justice was actually, he held stock in the company at issue. It was essentially a corrupt decision. Anyway, there was a series of cases that said, no, the states have to obey. The states are just little playthings. They're just subdivisions. That started the ball rolling towards this big federal government. We had to fight it ever since. Andrew Jackson was a big hero in that. But in terms of really, I think the modern decline, I think there's 2 pieces to that. One of them is FDR with the New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that really established that the government is in charge of everything. On paper, total control. The Supreme Court at the time said, no way, this is ridiculous. We have a constitution. You can't violate people's economic rights that way. And FDR came back and said, well, I'll just pack the court. That was the famous switch.
And don't forget the bookend of the New Deal, The Great Society, from LBJ on his way out the door.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, so I think that's really what got it started. The Republicans could not repeal the New Deal. They still haven't been able to because it took 60 years to win back Congress. That was with Newt Gingrich. Eisenhower didn't even see the danger. He didn't know much, didn't care much about politics. So Eisenhower kind of let the New Deal bake in. And then it took, 60 years to even start pulling those pieces apart. And that's going to take a long time. I think the other thing that in some ways is more serious is the spread of public education.
Mm-hmm.
So government schools. And that was a process. It was led by early progressives. They explicitly wanted, they were fighting Catholics. They hated Catholics.
Why wait for them to get to college to indoctrinate them and re-socialize them from the Catholics and Catholic schools when we can do it
literally
from, from kindergarten up? And boy, you nailed them all. I want to end with your quote that you put on Twitter, Gomez Davila. Socialism is the commercial name of state capitalism on the electoral market. This whole conversation began with the war against capitalism for socialism, just like the war against faith, family, and country, and absolute truth with moral relativism. Those are 2 wars of 3 that we have lost or are losing. Are we even capitalistic anymore? How close to socialism are we? We're a hybrid at best, right?
Honestly, we're about 80% socialist.
There's more than a problem with parties and elections. The problem is the American people. And that is where we must start. If we can fix the American people, maybe we can fix who they elect or even who they steal elections for and get to win. All right, appreciate you joining us. If people want to read your great work, they can do so at heritage.org. Peter St. Onge, Chief Economist at the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for your time.
Always a joy, Michael.
Talk to you next week, 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock on the dot this Wednesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We're under a wind advisory, if you can't tell. Gusts up to 45 miles per hour at times through tonight. We'll see some showers and some thunderstorms tonight, too, ahead of another warm day tomorrow. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Right now in Tennessee, crews are on the scene of a fire involving uranium at the Y-12 National Security Complex in Oak Ridge. No reports of injuries or contamination at this time. The National Nuclear Security Administration says this fire happened around 9:14 this morning. The complex's social media says there's no off-site impact to the public at this time. Y-12 supports the U.S. nuclear security enterprise through uranium storage, processing, and manufacturing. War on Ukraine. Patrick Revel in Kyiv tells us about a big rally in Moscow today.
We just saw President Putin appear at this huge concert rally in Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium, which is an enormous stadium in Moscow. Tens of thousands of people can be in attendance. And it was a rally, basically, firstly, where there was a lot of music from very, very pro-war performers. And then Vladimir Putin appeared and gave a speech where he said again that Russia was fighting on its historical borders. And basically, this was a rally to gin up support for the war. And I think the main message Putin was sending is that this is going to be a long conflict and that Russia should prepare for a long standoff with the West.
Yeah, Putin needs weapons and ammunition, and today hosted China's top foreign policy official Wang Yi in the Kremlin. Meanwhile, in Poland, President Biden said Putin's decision to pull back from the nuclear arms control deal is a big mistake as he reassured NATO allies of his commitment to helping Ukraine.
Today, as we approach the one-year anniversary of Russia's further invasion, it's even more important that we continue to stand together.
Biden was expected to announce new sanctions on Russia this week. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Currently at 11:06, cloudy skies, windy, wind advisory in effect. 71 in Franklin this hour, 71 in Mount Juliet, 72 down in the borough, downtown on Music Row, cloudy skies, 73 degrees. It feels like 73 in Nashville at WTN. The market, Dow's up 39, NASDAQ's up 14, the S&P's up 3. Nothing compared to the losses yesterday. The market, all three in the green, but basically flat at 11:07. I'm Michael DelGiorno for United Structural Systems. You're the first line of defense. You should walk around your house and take a look around from time to time. When you see bricks cracking, make note of that. When you see bowing basement walls or leaning chimneys or moisture in the crawl space or basement, these are all early signs of problems. Concrete's pretty simple. It cracks and sinks. Now, sometimes when you're seeing these things, it's nothing. Sometimes it's an early sign of something really big. That's why you got to take it seriously. And there's no reason not to call USS, United Structural Systems. They've been the go-to company for decades. We don't send a salesman to run up a tab, so you don't have to fear that. We send an actual product specialist because we're in the problem-solving business. And your inspection and estimate and evaluation is free and no obligation. And a good percentage of the time, it's nothing. It's just a cracked brick, and that's peace of mind. But when it is something serious, you need to catch it early. The longer you wait, the less options and more expensive it's going to be. So walk around, take a good look, and don't hesitate to call. We guarantee our best. Call USS, United Structural Systems, 227-2275, 227-2275. That's 227-2275 or online at USSTN.com. 11:08 in the morning at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Michael DelGiorno. Phone number 737-WWTN, 737-9986. You can call it. You can text it. On the text line, several reactions. The more godless we become, this is actually true. It sounds like a traditional evangelical statement, but collectively as a country, our generations and children at earlier and early ages, even pre-K, but certainly K through 12, and then at university levels, then reinforced in children's programming, sitcoms, dramas, motion pictures, magazines, and then once really conditioned, unleash social media. And we have a generation that is abandoning God's way. God is an absolute truth. The whole concept of God, family, country, and our intent as a nation of free people with liberty that comes from God, not man, to victimhood and dependency on a government that provides all. So if your husband leaves you, the government will take care of you. If dad dies, the kids don't take care of mom now. The government takes care of mom. The government is a solution for everything. Red just wrote a minute ago, oh my gosh, did the senior economic fellow at the Heritage Foundation just say we're 80% socialist? I think that number was right on the number. I mean, literally 80 to 85%. I think we ebb and flow now 5, but depending on the moment, 80 to 85%. We've lost that economic war that I defined 20 years ago. And you got a lot of things working against you. You got more tax receivers now than taxpayers. Good luck. That's a big problem come election time. Your debt, just like the government's interest on debt is $1 trillion. That used to be the total budget in my teen years. It's a third of the total budget just when I moved here. That's just the interest. That would be like your interest on your credit cards being what your total budget was for your household in 2008. And that's a tipping scale. And then when your debt is equal to your GDP, that's a real marker that I said would be a point of no return. When you have more tax receivers than payers, when your spending exceeds and your debt exceeds your GDP, that's a real marker. And the American dream dies, and the left's dream begins. And that's a senior economist telling you that we are right now 80% socialist. Then I've got Scott saying only Jesus can save the American people. And I agree with that. I believe wholeheartedly in 2 Corinthians 7:14. But not just for the reasons that you think. That's the only thing that makes self-governance possible, is what John Quincy Adams would say to you. If you don't have a God who you really know, who really knows you, whose nature you get, whose your nature you're honest about, the decreasing so he can increase, the holiness, the striving to be like him and to fulfill his will for you. Until you have that, how can you have a covenant marriage? Until you have that, how can you train up godly children? And then collectively, how that impacts your neighborhood, your community, your city, your county, your state, your country. It does start there. Now, economically, I think Peter St. Onge is brilliant to take you first to the New Deal. And then I kind of helped him, but I always said the bookend of that is the Great Society, where Obama and Hillary and Biden are taking us now, is just the execution of going from 80% socialistic to 100%. I mean, just since I moved here, just since Barack Obama, just the last 10, 15 years, the way they just socialized you into believing that you're a democracy and not a republic. They want you in mob rule, acting like a mob, because they want mob rule and elitist control. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, only Jesus can change people. We're seeing seeds of revival. By the way, somebody also said sacred cow with Vivek. I get it. He's Indian. No, I didn't even mean it that way. I was quoting him. He said, we got to attack some of these sacred cows. Although that would be very clever had I thought of that. But no, I did not mean to do that one. But anyway, that's just some of the interactions. So, if I were, nobody really commented on it. My takeaway from my interview with Chris is this is what I would call the matrix. This is narratives over understanding. And the matrix would be, if you're the left, the right is dangerous because they think they don't trust elections and they're creating insurrections. The right would be left are stealing elections. Somebody actually sent me this, which is why I'm commenting on it too. And this isn't from them. This was supposedly someone's post that was liked by 6,000, replied to by 2,000, and shared by whatever. Shared by 2,000, replied to by 1,000. And it basically says, I see everyone on the right fighting about Trump versus DeSantis. Well, they're the two leading candidates, and there's going to be a long vetting and discussion of them. That's not necessarily fighting. Now, I understand that there's going to be a tone coming from one side of that, or early on, it seems like, that Donald Trump is going to tweet nasty things about DeSantis, but DeSantis isn't tweeting back. And he just keeps right on leading and doing things as governor and hasn't even announced his candidacy yet. But does that have constituents fighting now? I'm not going to fight that point. I see two camps developing real quick between Trump and DeSantis. So I see everyone right now fighting about Trump versus DeSantis, and I just laugh to myself, the poster writes. The presidency in 2024 is a pipe dream with DeSantis or Trump on the ticket. To be frank, I don't know if we'll ever see a Republican president again. Millions and millions of illegals are pouring over our border and being distributed to key swing states. An elaborate, trained to believe that an electorate trained to believe that hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots are appearing normal. Demographics is destiny. He who controls the machine controls the outcome. That would be the software. We didn't fix 2020, and we didn't build the wall, so don't expect another free and fair election. First of all, that post you could have posted prior to Donald Trump's defeat of Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was hearing all of that. The names change. The fight's over Trump versus Cruz or Trump versus Rubio. But it's all a pipe dream after Barack Obama for 8 years. You're never going to see another Republican. Look at all the illegal immigrants. Look how they read it. That is not new rhetoric. Is there truths laced in that? Yes, but I think the discussion me and Chris Walker had is a less narrative, less matrix, more understanding way of looking at it. You'll have a Republican president again. You might have one real soon. But you got to go beyond they're stealing elections. They don't properly acknowledge election results. There is a middle ground, an understanding, and a truth ground. And that is Democrats have outperformed early voting for a long time. COVID initiated mail-in voting, which created some even more opportunities. I mean, I watched Donald Trump not engage in the early voting battle, knowing it was a COVID election. And rather than just making it about the election's going to be stolen, why didn't he encourage people to engage in early voting? Why did he encourage people in going and finding people that don't normally vote and getting them to vote, doing the same thing they did? See, if you're stuck with there's election fraud or nothing, well, you're going to keep getting what I call beaten, or what I call cheating fair and square and getting beat. At that point, this meme or post everyone's sharing becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I want you to understand there's something different. Yes, they are early voting better than Republicans, and Republicans need to meet them there. Yes, their ground game is stronger, but what you're missing is what they're really doing. Harvesting ballots through organizations well-funded, finding people who aren't interested in voting and have never voted, putting the ballot in their ignorant, unengaged, non-voting hands, getting them to fill it out and delivering it. So while you're spending millions trying to find likely registered voters or ads to attack or win hearts and minds for you through radio and television and social media, they're spending the money on the ground, harvesting the ballots, going and finding the people, and you don't ever see them coming because they don't pop up in polling. They don't qualify for polling. Polling's only looking at registered likely voters. They're winning elections with unregistered, no desire whatsoever, ignorant, unengaged people and getting them to vote. That's not the same as, oh, they're reprogramming. We need to go back to paper and pencil or they're going to steal the election. Now, the problem is even the most astute Republicans will only acknowledge, well, we got to protect against this in states we control. That's just going to make blue states blue forever, even in bankruptcy, even when a majority of their population exiles. But it's going to make swing states impossible to swing because they're going to swing them from their blue cities. I'll tell you, I've never said this before in 16 years working here. You should listen to the podcast of my visit with Chris Walker. You should listen to my visit today with Peter St. Onge. And you should share it more than this guy, 6,000 shares of a non-truth. This is just victimhood. They're going to steal elections, doesn't matter what you do. We've already lost. They were saying that right before Donald Trump won. Why do you think we had such a media meltdown? Come on, think harder than that. Go deeper than that. Takes a little more energy and a little more thought to achieve real understanding and not narrative repeating. I hope you engage in that today. All right, 11:21 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I want to finish where I started. You can't watch a commercial. You can't look at a picture. You can't see a movie, a television show without every possible nationality or color or sexuality or gender being represented. And if you did watch them, and I made you guess, what percentage of America is gay? If you went by television, you'd swear 50-50. Wait till you hear the real numbers. Wait till you hear the truth next.
Got a traffic problem. Center lane block 40 westbound at Charlotte Pike. That's the Highway 70 exit 201. Crews in East Tennessee say that fire at the Y-12 National Security Complex, which stores uranium, is contained. There are no reports of injury or contamination. Updates on this and President Biden apparently tripping going up the stairs of Air Force One, departing Europe. These stories are more at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, it's been a series of trips, this European trip. Dog owner. My son does this to me all the time, Ken. Dad, if you had to, and you had to, who would you shoot? Me or Scout?
Oh, my gosh.
And I go, I'm not going to shoot either of you. No, if you had to.
If you had to.
Translation, what he's asking is, who do you love more, Scout or me? And, of course, I always have to go, Nick, I would shoot Scout. Then Scout goes, But here's a piece of research. About 80% of parents who own dogs value their pet's health as much as their child's. It's not that you love your dogs more than your kids. It's that your pets are more obedient than your kids. No.
Don't talk back.
I mean, there's just enough love to go around, right? I have enough love to care about. Now, I can tell you, Tony 1, our Maine Coon, they wanted to charge me $2,600 to keep him alive till Monday, to do $3,000 of tests to confirm what they feel pretty strongly is brain cancer.
Oh.
Now, at that time, and this isn't that long ago, but like 2012, we didn't have any money. And it took us till 3 a.m. to do it. But crying, I looked at Andrew and I said, Andrew, we can't spend this money.
Yeah.
We have 3 young children. I mean, I guess to Nick's hypothetical, who do you love more? We loved you. And we shot Tony 1, all right? We proved it. But, normally when resources allow, I listen, Boomer is a part of our family. He is an integral cast member in a perfect childhood for my children.
Yeah.
And I'm going to love him. But then it starts going into the rituals that we have. Yeah, I mean, we notice when our pet isn't acting normal and something might be wrong, and we go to the vet.
Yep.
I know when he's acting sick. I know when I see a license plate and paper towel in his poop out back, he got into something.
A license plate.
Boomer likes to poop in one area. Looks like an Indian burial ground. That's how many chicken bones have passed through him. But we have our little rituals. Like I do spend time with him at night in bed, and then I kiss him. I say, go to bed. And he runs all the way to the front of the house, and he gets his little bed where he guards the door.
Oh, little buddy.
But, I don't think it's a matter of, I don't know what they're trying to do with this. We're loving pets like kids now. That's ridiculous. They're a dog. Throw them outside or shoot them. No, I mean, there's enough love to go around, isn't there, for crying out loud?
Absolutely.
That's a story
Especially
about
for
nothing.
dogs. Come on.
We have a new treatment, according to New York University. Study found that silver diamond fluoride can lower the risk of cavities in children by 80%. Meanwhile, every parent listening right now is going, all right, I got to look for silver diamond fluoride. All right. By the way, next week's study will be 80% of children using silver diamond fluoride get cancer. But, by the way, I'm 58 years old, and all I ever wanted to do was have a cavity to see what it would feel like, and I've yet to have one.
Knock on wood, brother.
Why? What does it feel like?
It
doesn't matter. I got to feel it myself.
Yeah, if they don't find it in time, it can be pretty painful.
Yeah, my dad just had a tooth taken out. He was out for like 3 days, completely just laying on the couch.
I've never heard the or known what fillings feel like. I don't know. I'm 58, so I experience everything once.
You do not.
I tried to have babies, but it didn't work. No, I'm kidding. Here's how many Americans believe in one true love. Can I just stop even before we do this and say, I believe we all have first loves. I really do. It's the first time we feel some of, the Bible's so specific. There's phileo love. There's agape love. I love you as God would have me love. Phileo is where we get Philadelphia, brotherly love. And then there's eros. I mean, we all remember our first love. That's the first person that we were genuinely attracted to. And as we got to know each other, started feeling for the first time eros urges as well as close friendship and maybe even the thought of commitment and agape were the three combined. That's true love. So when I look at this, I go, it'd be like saying to Mac, if anything, it's Heidi, right? No.
Hannah. That's actually funny. That's her sister, but yeah, Hannah.
Well, let's get that straight. Cause
yeah. That's please.
All right. No one's listening. Is the sister hot too?
No. Let's carry on.
So now you're going to say that
beautiful family. It's a beautiful family.
So your future sister-in-law is not hot? Is that what you're saying?
Beautiful family.
He's pulling a Pete Buttigieg.
He is. He's like Pete. Anything you can do about the toxic waste in Ohio and when you'll go? No, but I mean, the truth of the matter is if something happened with Hannah, could someone else come into your life that you have a different but just as deep friendship with and are just as attracted to, and eventually, if you apply the agape covenant to, would actually get closer to through time? In other words, we pick and choose these things, and then we apply godly principles, and then he creates the result. This notion that you had a true love and you lost it, now you'll never find another. That's Satan's game. That's a moron's game. And the same is true when we lose loved ones. Now, I can tell you I've never experienced it. My greatest fear is something happens to my wife. I have got to die first.
Me too.
And I try to
Me
live.
too.
And I try to live in such a way that it'll happen.
I'm doing pretty good at that as well.
Yeah. That's why I looked at Andrew and said, I think I'm going to start smoking again. Why? Because I'm feeling a little healthy. I'm going to start drinking. I'm going to start driving unsafe cars at very high speeds. Why? Deep down, subliminally, I don't want to outlive her because I don't want to wake up one moment and ever experience in reality what is my greatest dread, because I don't think I ever could find. And then what happens when we meet people that go through that? Eventually, they go through the grieving process. Eventually, they find somebody and they look you in the eye one day and go, I never thought I would love again, but please accept her. I think even so-and-so would approve. And they got to get over guilt to do that. But the truth is, do I think there's one true love? I want to say yes and no. I don't know how to answer it. If you make it so, there is. You know? We make deep connections, but when we make real commitments, even deeper connections are created. And I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say it out loud because I don't want it to happen. But I think if something happened to Fritzy,
oh, little buddy,
you know, let's face it. You spend the $250 and you have him cremated. You do what's right, but you're going to bring a puppy home and have love again, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like I still love my other wiener dogs and miss them tremendously.
Yeah.
But I love Fritz just as much as I love them.
55% of adults prefer complete monogamy or having one committed romantic partner. Well, that should be 100%.
Wait, what was it?
55%.
What?
Well, let me tell you something. I could do a whole, we're 33 after. I could do a story from earlier today. I'm telling you, marriage is on the verge of extinction.
Oh, yes.
And it's men that are going to cause it. And remember that video I was telling you about the other day? This younger woman, explaining why marriage is going to go away. What's in it for the guy? You don't get a wife. You don't get a soulmate. You don't get a partner. In fact, that's considered insulting in today's culture, belittling in today's culture. You get a partner. Women leave men more than men leave women, and then they take half your money. What's in it for a guy? They don't even promise you a child anymore, or that they would be a mother necessarily. You know, hard-hitting comments to make in a public setting because, that's all the things. I mean, we can't even figure out feminism versus this transgendered movement, let alone these deep-seated things. But yeah, but the study today is, of course, we have twice as many single men as girls now. Men are finding no use for relationships anymore. There's nothing. There's no in between. I would say you can't experience what I experience in marriage with no God, let alone with a commitment that says there is no out. It's not an option. I mean, those are the kind of things that have to be done and trusted and said. But yeah, 55% believe in monogamy. What does that say about marriage down the road? 34% describe their perfect relationship as being a little different. Adults under 45 tend to be more open to non-monogamy than older counterparts. That's that lesson of the three chairs, getting more and more.
I mean, I know people like
everything that I've been warning people that they go, I'm so sick of this guy shoving his religion down our throat. Everything I have warned is coming true, which is why I'd like to announce my engagement to a horse. We're getting married in December. We're going to have a human-drawn carriage. Where I'm going with that.
Her name is Priscilla.
Do you, Priscilla, take my hand? Oh, how did this become worthy of being 6 minutes late for the news? Final say is next. News starts now.
Wind advisory because gusts can get up to 45 miles per hour today. That's going to last through tonight when we could see some showers and storms. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Right now in East Tennessee, crews at the Y-12 National Security Complex in Oak Ridge say a fire is contained in the area where uranium is produced. There are no reports of injury or contamination. President Biden, departing Europe, left NATO allies with this message on supporting Ukraine against Russia.
This is an important moment. I look forward to the discussion and the next steps we can take together and to keep our alliance strong.
Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin hosted China's top foreign policy official at the Kremlin. Reports say Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg will visit the toxic site in Palestine tomorrow, where that train derailed, several cars flipping. And in sports, the Titans are releasing offensive tackle Taylor Lewan. That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, W2N News.
It's going to be the same Titans as when he was on the team because he rarely played. He was always hurt.
Yep.
Oh, really? Okay, I won't say that on the air.
Okay.
So Heidi is hot is what he was saying. No, I'm kidding. Why is it I didn't do this with the other producers. I find myself enjoying doing that to you like I did with Tommy. There is something about, because when you get older, you get wiser and you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like everything you think is huge is over for us.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
an
just
illusion.
done, yeah.
And if I could do it over, I wouldn't have let it be the boogeyman.
Wouldn't have let it.
So
I wouldn't have cared.
But I know what it's like to be your age and have life in front of you and all of those words. So it's fun. I find myself playing. But I'm just making fun.
Of course.
But Heidi is hot, isn't she?
Beautiful family, Michael. Beautiful family.
What does that mean? I don't think you're.
They're all great.
I don't think Anna wants you thinking Heidi's a beautiful family member. It's just
That's
your
a beautiful
sister.
family. Beautiful family.
See, I
yes.
never have that problem with my in-laws. I don't have beautiful in-laws. So it's not they're not beautiful. My wife is, but they're not.
You got the cream of the crop. There you go.
Like Anna's dating somebody right now, and then she's always talking about his brother. And I'm like,
Oops.
Yeah.
Oops.
Can't do that.
Yeah,
That'd be like the one thing.
Does the boyfriend know?
Yeah, but it's kind of like an ongoing joke.
Gotcha.
He's definitely the favorite kid.
Good.
Like you go in the house, there's pictures of him all over, but not Seth. And but that's all right because Seth gets all that love and affirmation from our family. I really think it's going to be there is a good chance Anna marries her first boyfriend.
Wow.
It's that 1 in a million that I think is actually going to.
That's incredible.
It could not. I mean, there's some proclivities.
Of course. You never know.
Depending on going to different colleges and so on.
Oh, they are going to different schools.
But not different cities. So
Great. That's huge.
I think it's going to happen. I've told Andrea that. I've always felt. And that's why it's the only time I ever interjected myself in my kid's life. Anna got in a bad mood, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
I have to watch all these words. Whenever you're discussing teenagers in front of teenagers, trust me, there is a code of conduct and language. Everybody has to be like Pete Buttigieg when you have teenagers.
Yeah.
But
yes, you do.
So Anna was down. I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I broke up with Seth. And I went, you did? And then we had a long talk. Then about 2 days later, she's starting to fall into depression and she's really sorry and really sad. I said, why don't you just call him? She wouldn't do it. Why don't you just text him? She wouldn't do it. I got his number and I texted him. And I got them back together. Cupid drew his bow.
Wow, good for you.
But I wouldn't do that for any of the other boyfriends. This is one I think is real.
Yeah, worth fighting for.
And this is one that is worthy. In fact, when she does break up with him, it's going to be like a scene in that one movie where the dad's crying.
Yeah, exactly. Taking it harder than her.
Take him back one more time. But anyway. So Heidi is hot. That's cool. Is that why you use her as the screensaver on your phone?
No.
I'm completely kidding.
Who is that girl on your screen phone?
Final say, narrative, wokeness, being seen, multiculturalism versus reality. They meet in a Gallup research poll next. Hey now! At 11:42, we have cloudy skies, windy conditions, 73 degrees at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood, 74 to the north in Hendersonville. It is 74 downtown. The market looking better. Dow's triple figures now. Up 109. We lost 800 yesterday, but, up 109. NASDAQ's up. See, Biden tripped, the market goes up. NASDAQ up 50 and the S&P's up 12. No great shakes, but all three are in the green, and the market is slightly up at 11:42. I'm Michael DelGiorno. If you think mortgage rates are still super high, you need to super think again. In fact, call my friends at Loan Pronto and see just how much they have fallen to 5 months lows. What does this mean for you? Well, it may be time to do refinance. Maybe you got locked into one of those 7s or 6s or high 5s. APRs are now in the 4s. Maybe it's time to start house hunting again. Shopping. Maybe since you're refinancing, your home is appreciated, you want to tap into some of that equity and get rid of your debt. Why? This goal is simple. We want to free up cash flow to afford inflation, and it's not going away. And then, of course, we want to get rid of any debt that's attached to a variable rate as we head deeper into a recession. Bottom line is you can wipe out that high-interest credit card debt, get peace of mind. You can close in about 14 days, get a more reasonable rate, or get back to shopping. Interest rates have fallen to 4-month lows. Call my friends at Loan Pronto and lock in your rate today. 499-5780. 499-5780. That's 499-5780 or online at loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval. Feels good to be back. Which tells me one of two things. When I was having guests and meaningful conversations, you had more commercials. Now that we're shooting the breeze and trying to get you in trouble with Hannah, suddenly we're back. It's pretty scary for you. I want to finish the show where I started it. And that is, and again, it's a worldview issue, is what it is. I have a God. I have a Savior. My God happens to be not only my creator, who knows me better than I know myself, he happens to be my salvation, my very life itself, my sanctification. He created me. I have a flawed, natural character. He has a different nature, one that I can take on as I decrease and allow him to increase, as I die daily and allow him to live through me. It's going to take me loving him more than myself, but that's the essence of Christianity as a worldview. And that worldview informs everything. It informs the priorities of my values, because I can change you dramatically by changing the orders of your values. If you value your wife more than work, you're going to spend your time a lot differently than somebody that values career, wealth, and work over marriage and family. And I promise you, if you prioritize career, marriage, and family, it's not always as simple as your kid someday in therapy. My dad was never home. He never loved me. No, your dad thought he was loving you by providing for you. He didn't realize that you didn't necessarily need shiny toys. You just needed his arm around you. But if you don't have that God, if you don't have that way, if you don't have that truth, if you don't have that life, what do you have? Culture. Now you have culture's theory, culture's lie, and culture's consequence that you've adopted. See, if you don't have a firm worldview, you're going to drift into their worldview, which is why Paul goes through all the laws as only a lawyer can. And in Romans 12:1, cuts to the chase. Therefore, in view of God's mercies, offer yourself up as a holy living sacrifice, not one that dies and gives up life, but dies daily and chooses to allow God to live through them. And do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's not Michael bragging about being a Christian. That's Christianity. And that's a worldview. Now, culture will say, I'm hateful because I don't worship you based on the color of your skin, or worship you or see you, as they like to say, based on your gender confusion, or your sexuality or escapades. Now, once you don't, and I try to warn you, and if I leave tomorrow or die tomorrow, remember I told you this. These narratives, they always die of reality. They always die of consequence. The lies are always revealed by truth, and the light always illuminates the darkness. But sooner or later played out, consequence arrives. Ignorance, bliss, until consequence arrives. And you never abandon something without replacing it. This notion that we're going to abandon God, but not necessarily be evil or godless. You're going to replace it with something. Could be global warming, could be multiculturalism, could be new tolerance, which is intolerance in the name of tolerance. So you watch a television show today, and you can't have a scene without a black person, an Asian person, a Hispanic person, a white person, a woman, a Muslim, and a gay. Can't do it. Even though that doesn't make any sense in reality. And just because it doesn't make any sense doesn't mean that you're not multicultural. My world informs me that I'm created by God in his image. That makes me different than animals. That's why I don't love animals more than people. And I love animals. I was born in a fallen nature. God has a perfect nature, and I am to conform into that likeness. I don't get there by conforming, following culture. I get there by transforming through Scripture and God's Word. So I'm not going to like you because you're Indian, or I'm not going to like you because you're black. I'm not even going to focus on that. You're a sacred creation of Almighty God, knit together while you were still in your mother's womb, and it's God's will that we be eternal family. And I'm commanded to love my God more than anything and love you. But that's not what culture says. And so now they're playing a numbers game. And I noticed in watching The Bachelor, everything was about being seen. I feel seen. I can tell you see me. And I'm like, what is all that, being seen? And that's because it's one of the root systems of multiculturalism. That your victimhood is because you didn't see a black person on screen every time somebody was on screen. Or you didn't see a gay every time someone. They actually think they're solving this and saving lives. So now if you watch television, I don't care if it's a cartoon, I don't care if it's a kid's show, I don't care if it's a comedy, I don't care if it's a drama, I don't care if it's a movie, I don't care if it's a anchor set, I don't care if it's a man on the street interview, I don't care if it's anything. All these things are represented simultaneously. And you would get the quick impression, half of America's gay. And then you read this Gallup poll. After showing some slight increases in 2020 and 2021, U.S. adults' identification as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or something other than heterosexual. I mean, look at all we've added to it. See, gays used to send me nasty notes when I would say, for all this focus, for all this talk, you're still only 3% of the population and not growing. And some have you as low as 1.5%. Now you've added gay, bisexual, transgendered, and other. Confused, maybe transitorily confused. Maybe you were bisexual in 2020, now you're not. You figured it out. 80% of gender confusion among boys, I think it was 90% among girls, is solved by the end of puberty. And we're wanting to do permanent surgeries. Add them all together, they're still at 7.2%. Do you think 7.2% is what it looks like on television? What is being seen is a narrative. What is being seen is political correctness. What is being seen is cultural. What is being seen is a replacement to a more perfect worldview with a lie. The translation, the only thing left shocking in life is the truth. Now they're being greatly overseen. And for all of the recruitment, and that's really what it is, the numbers aren't growing. Yeah, think about that for a while. Information-fueled, opinion-driven. That's Super Talk 99.7 WTN 1157. The Matt Murphy Show is next at noon, followed by Brian Wilson in the drive home. Plenty of Super Talk on the Superway. As you know, I don't play the narrative game. So I would imagine everybody, I could tell from the right websites, we're all jumping on the Liam Neeson story. I haven't listened to anybody else on this station, so if somebody did do this, I'm not insulting them. I'm just saying I get it. You know, we pick our sides. We pick our narratives. Obviously, Joy Behheim is an enemy of our side. And so if she made Liam Neeson uncomfortable, let's do some talk radio with that. Let's talk about, can a woman make a man feel uncomfortable? We make them feel uncomfortable and they get canceled. How about when they make us feel uncomfortable? And the only thing I'm thinking is, how homely must Joy Behar be that if she flirts with Liam Neeson, he felt uncomfortable? I got news for you. I'm so homely. Anybody finds me attractive, I appreciate it.
So much, I feel like you've been here.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. No, you talk about it so much. Don't blow my cover.
Joy wants to get taken by you.
I will find you and I will kill you. I love it.
So I don't know what the big deal was. I don't know what was so uncomfortable that, you know. Liam Neeson's one of my favorite actors. By the way, I don't think there's anything that she said to Liam Neeson I wouldn't say to Liam Neeson. And I love all his movies. In fact, Andrew's in awe of how it doesn't make, like, there's the Taken series, but virtually everything he makes, whether it's called Taken 1, Taken 2, or Taken 3, is the same Taken premise. He's the same character. And I can't get enough of it. If he cookie cuttered, spit one out today, I'd watch it tonight. But I'm like the only guy that I guess doesn't get the narrative. I guess we're supposed to all be on Liam Neeson's side. We're supposed to all turn into a big fight over can a woman. You know what? I would love a female boss to make me feel uncomfortable.
I am a man of certain skills.
Yes. That's a little Sean Connery, though.
Oh, Sean Connery.
By the way,
I'm a man of certain skills as well.
I had a friend that used to text me in Sean Connery. Everything had 3 S's with an H.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Matt Murphy's here. The hair is styled, the beard started, so all 13 people watching on television enjoy that. And I hope for the thousands of us listening, you focus on radio today. What's on the show today? Anything good?
Joe Biden fell.
Yeah,
you already know that. You know, but I have
he fell in the market rose.
It's my understanding. I was watching CNN earlier. They say it was the best fall since JFK tripped in 1961 in Berlin, Germany.
Or Gerald Ford. See you tomorrow morning at 9.
News. I'm Michelle Franzen. A preliminary report will be released tomorrow by the National Transportation Safety Board on its findings so far on the toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Secretary of